We're here to present for the conference. Obviously, I'm the special assistant to the president. Another word for the vice president or the head of facilities and construction at Tuskegee University. I had with me Ms. Taja Ingram. It's important that I brought her because at Tuskegee, we have a tradition of training and whole body learning. So this is actually her first time presenting. So she's gonna do great, but this is kind of, I've only been there for 2 months, but that's the first thing that I learned. There's a very big heritage of what Booker T. Washington kind of laid this blueprint out of how to become an expert in something, and a lot of it is by doing. So we're gonna do it. She's gonna learn by doing. But why we're here today is to talk about some AI-powered farm-to-policy data platforms and farm-to-table initiatives that we already have going and that actually we have proposed and have grants out there. Whenever the government opens back up, hopefully, we can get some funding for that. But either way, what we came here to talk about today is how we juxtapose our legacy and history with the legacy of George Washington Carver, who we talk about, who is another hero of our school, and how we kind of take the blueprint of what they did and apply this to this topic. So I'm going to let Ms. Ingram take over.
Hello, everybody. Like you said, my name is Taja, and I am extremely excited just to be here in this room with you all today. Brandon doesn't waste, Dr. Tolliver doesn't waste any time throwing me into the fire. And so he mentioned, hey, like, we're gonna go to this conference. And I was like, oh, I love going to conferences. He's like, no, you're gonna speak at a conference. And I'm like, okay, that's the next level. So again, I'm excited to be here. We're gonna be presenting on, our presentation is essentially called From the Ground Up, which as we started doing this work, we realized that had a lot of meaning, a lot of different profound meaning for just that phrase. And Dr. Tolliver and I are extremely excited to share some of our ideas and some of our research and just the work that we put into it. So, just what are we trying to solve? Our work seeks to highlight and propose AI-powered solutions for underserved and disadvantaged farmers and producers in their on-the-ground realities that can, and our hope is that can directly translate into equitable and effective governance and policy-making developments and strategies. And so our hope and our fight and our love for humanity really just proposes that everyone is seen, heard, and most importantly, felt. And so that's just from a local level to a national level. And so our solution-based approach is complemented with advanced technologies such as GI tracking and remote sensing for environmental data, which includes soil health, water quality, and there's another one, carbon sequestration. And that's often in collaboration with USDA agencies. So again, Tuskegee University is a historically Black land grant institution, and they established something known as, ASFRDC, which stands for Alabama Small Farm Rural Economic Development Center. Got it. Those are a lot of acronyms. And the purpose of that is really just to bridge the gap between agricultural research and its tangible benefits for small scale minority farmers and producers. So here's a little bit more of our agenda for today. I have the opportunity to, just go out and get information from farmers at Tuskegee and different farmers in the community. We'll be talking a little bit about equality versus equity, challenges for underserved and disadvantaged, the legacy of GWC, which that stands for, if you see that, it stands for George Washington Carver, the Jessup Wagon economic community impact, and how our AI pilot that Dr. Tauber worked very hard on, the goals and objectives on that, equity in action, and then the big picture of it all / call to action. But first, an icebreaker.
So if you have your phone, you have your phone, you should be able to hopefully get that. There's 2 questions. You can just do the first one for now. We'll get back to the second question. But while you guys are working on that, I'm gonna just give you a little bit more history about the university. We were founded in 1881, and like I was telling you, what you see here, this Jessup Wagon, we'll talk about it a little bit more, but it was a movable school. So before we were able to have pretty buildings and buildings to host everybody, they actually went out to the community and taught how to farm. George Washington Carver, who was probably one of the greatest farmers of all time, if not the greatest farmer, probably a little biased, but he would go out and probably what most people would sell or do infomercials on, and he would actually go to the community and roll up in these wagons and hold class, teach people how to get their crops better, how to get more yield, how to make fallow soil fertile, all these different types of things. So that's the type of spirit that we're leaning on as a foundation for what we're trying to do. So let's go to the results and see what we got. All right, I don't see any responses, but maybe some of you guys could just say them out loud. Since this is the technology's not working. Here, correct me. So what did you say?
I said
Okay, we have a creative inventor.
Savior, inventor.
Inventor, okay.
And then cotton.
Mm-hmm.
Iowa State University.
Iowa State
Oh,
University,
nice.
that's a good one. Anybody else? Anyone take a stab? And obviously we'll get more into just what that looks like and what it actually is. But like I was saying, so my title is facility program manager. And so when Dr. Tolliver told me that we were gonna do this, I'm like, man, like, I don't really know a lot about like the ins and the outs of farming. And so I really had to rely very heavily on my community to go out and to research and to, actually hear the stories of the people who were actually doing this work. And so they were like, what are you talking about? And so I let them know, what this is and what we're talking about today. And here were some of the quotes, and I'm gonna read a few more that didn't make this slide. They didn't want to be showcased, but I did talk to a lot of different farmers, and it was very interesting because a lot of the things that they were saying, I began to see a pattern. And so underserved or disadvantaged is not, this is Mr. Gibson, the president of the 2020 Farmers Co-op. Underserved or disadvantaged, it's not a quantum issue. There's a group of people that do not have access to resources, and they don't distribute them equally or fairly. We don't get access to the same resources. Mr. Hooks, farm liaison from Tuskegee University. When it comes to underserved farmers, an issue is that they lump us all in the same pool, nonprofit, profit, etc., when trying to apply for certain grants. And I'll read a few more of just some of the quotes that I pulled out from some of the farmers. What small farmer can produce enough to fill container quantities? We can't compete with that scale. Okay, another quote, farming is a huge cost. A decent tractor costs about $60,000, 10 acres of land, that's another $15,000. And that's before you even pay for seeds, fertilizer, the well, it's another $20,000. And I haven't even mentioned payroll or labor cost. Another quote, every 10 years I have to take out another loan just to stay in it. But banks won't work with you, especially if you don't already have credit or land equity. You can't get those loans. Another quote, the average age of a farmer is 59. For Black farmers is 62. We've lost our acreage, down from 10% of farmland to just 1%. Nobody is inheriting the business. And one quote that really stuck out to me, and it was more of a question, but it was Dr. Malone. She works for Virginia College. She was saying, how can AI help me? Like, how can AI help me? And I thought that was so golden because that directly ties into what we're going to be talking about today.
I just want to, that was very good. Let me just add one other kind of thought on that. And what is if you think about in our area of Alabama and a lot of other areas, in Tuskegee, even though we have a school and a town, it's a food desert. Tuskegee itself has 5,000 acres of farmland, and Macon County has farms everywhere. So it doesn't even make any sense if you think about it. You have farms, you have local food sources, but you have a food desert where you can't get local produce, where you can't get healthy food. So a lot of it is, the AI part is important in terms of the production and helping people that don't have the technical know-how, but a lot of it is just common sense. You have farms, you have farmers, you have people that need food, and you can't connect the dots. So I just wanted to add that. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about it, right? Equality and versus equity and the foundation of fairness. So again, I had to do a lot of research, so a lot of these definitions are really more for me than I'm sure for you. But I like to get to the root of things, all the pun intended. So farming has become capital intensive and expensive, and small or underserved farmers can't absorb the upfront cost without fair access to credit or grants. And so, like I said, I wanted to start with some basic definitions. Disadvantaged and underserved, I realized, weren't the same things. Disadvantaged refers to a group of people that who face systematic barriers from hardships, especially ones economically, socially, structurally, racially, different things like that. So think that they've been held back from unfair systems. And then underserved refers to a group of people who have not received fair or adequate resources or opportunities for their service. Think they've been left out or not included enough or overlooked. And so I'm sure you've all seen this equality and equity demonstration or illustration, but imagine that you're at a baseball game and there's 3 people that are standing on a box. Equality says that each person gets the same box to stand on. And then equity, instead of giving everyone the same box as you see on the right, we give them what they need to see over the fence. And then justice removes the fence altogether and replaces it with clear barriers. And so that is just some of the work that the AI pilot program will help to solve. And again, we'll get into how great that is.
All right. I'm going to tag in again.
Yes,
So I think also another important fact about when you get on this topic, this is sometimes touchy. Even though in the equity picture there's 2 boxes there, that doesn't necessarily mean more resources. Sometimes it just means focused, giving somebody what they need. So it could actually be less in a lot of cases, but if you provide something what somebody needs, for instance, if you've been a farmer and you're from a rural location, you may not know how to write a grant proposal. There's nothing wrong with that. But having that resource available to you can be actually a force multiplier that would make that picture, make them stand up probably taller than the other people. So I think that it's just important to point that out, that the equity part doesn't necessarily mean more resources. It means providing the resources that are needed by the individual. Thank you.
Mhm. And so, sorry. Okay. And so the policy and equity impact, so again, the aggregated AI data makes small farm performance visible to policymakers. Pretty much everything that Dr. Tolliver just mentioned. And so I'll just move on from this slide just for the sake of time. The equity challenge for underserved farmers. Again, as I was doing this research, I wanted to dig a little bit more into, what were the categories? And here is just some statistics that I found as I was talking with farmers, online research, loan applications. In 2020, only 36% of loan applications from farmers identifying as Blacks were approved. In contrast, about 72% of white farmer applicants were approved. Also, 16% of Black applicants were denied, the highest rate among demographic groups. Skill imbalance. Policies and farm bill subsidies are designed for large-scale producers, those who can afford shipping container levels of output. Again, that goes back to the question that I asked the farmer directly, and he gave me the answers, like what small-time farmers producing shipping level containers. And so that scale imbalance kind of highlights that when it comes to the data of some of the things that were actually, and it's not just obviously about feeling and different things like that or emotions, but just some of the hard data that we were able to see. And so loss of legacy. I mentioned the average age of a Black farmer is 62 years old, and not enough younger farmers. It's not just a demographic issue. Sometimes it can be a policy failure. And urgency for a new model, which goes back to the justice conversation. AI and equity-centered tracking can spotlight where access gaps exist and hold agencies accountable.
All right, sorry, I think what you'll see in our next couple slides here is that one thing that AI can do is help close the data gap. That is probably the biggest differentiator right now, is having data to back it up. We have a lot of very opinionated people on both sides, and numbers don't lie. So if you can get the data and find reliable data that can be backed up, that data can act as a bridge to the policies that a lot of these farmers and agricultural specialists need to get the support they need. So that's what we're gonna be presenting in the next couple slides, is how to leverage that information.
Okay, so the next slide actually highlights the legacy of George Washington Carver. So we'll be able to go back to, just some of your answers and give you a little bit more fruit to it. Again, it's just amazing. Some people have just reduced him to a guy that does something with peanuts or something like that. But I would love to just kind of read his accolades and honorable mentions. So he's been called the Black Leonardo, coined by Time magazine in 1941 for his creative artistry. In his early years, he was called the plant doctor. Farmers and neighbors would actually, as a young boy, would bring him sick plants to heal and that was even before he had formal training. Nature's poet was a title given by writers and journalists for his deep reverence for God and nature. And really just comparing his laboratory to a sanctuary. In one of his quotes, plants speak when one listens with the heart. So he just was this very, just not soft, but just soft and powerful guy. He was like this gentle giant. The Peanut Man. a term used nationally after his 1921 congressional testimony on peanuts, making him a household name. The gentle warrior of science, he was very soft-spoken yet powerful in his advocacy for education, racial uplift, and scientific progress. The sage of Tuskegee, given by his students and colleagues affectionately, recognized him for his wisdom, his patience, his mentorship, and fatherhood, although he never actually married or had any biological children of his own. Henry Ford praised him as a pioneer, a scientist of making industrial products from agricultural raw materials, calling him one of the world's greatest living scientists. And he was seen as a spiritual guide as much as he was his teacher, and he was a biblical scholar, a child of God. And he says, he said himself as to who he was, and this is actually one thing that I really love about him. He says, I'm simply God's servant, endeavoring in my humble way to do that which God has given me the trust to do. There are riches far above silver and gold, and riches that no amount of money can buy, and that is the supreme joy of loving humanity. So he's just awesome. Like, he's this guy that, he used science to serve mankind. And just a little bit more about him. He was born into slavery in 1864. He grew up in Diamond, Missouri. And he became one of the most prominently respected African American in the world. His father died when he was born. He was crushed under a lumber cart, and his mother and him actually were kidnapped and were for the purpose of being resold. And his owner, Moses Carver, actually sent out an agent to go get him, and he actually did find him, but at the time that he found him, he was severely ill. He had whooping cough. So he kind of grew up very frail, and he would really work inside with Susan Carver, just doing household chores and different things like that. Let's see. So he actually spoke about an experience where he was out in nature and he was enjoying the solace as a very small boy, and he would have what some would call a vision. And he says, I was exploring the almost virgin woods, and I had an impression that someone was there ahead of me. Things were so orderly, so clean, so harmoniously beautiful. In those same woods a few years later, I was to understand the meaning of this boyish impression, because I was practically overwhelmed with the sense of some great presence. Not only had someone been there, someone was there. I knew it was the great spirit of the universe. Never since have I been without this consciousness. So education, he attended Iowa State. He later became a faculty. And then he spent around 40 years after he was recruited by Booker T. Washington, the founder of Tuskegee, serving. He was doing a lot of his research was there as well. And so again, he was an inventor. He came up with many different ways to do a lot of different things, which I'll get into. But again, in some of his lifespan of work, he was a professor, he was a scientist, artist, an inventor, a humanitarian, agriculturist, he was a man of God, he was a community advocate. Okay. Okay. Economic and community impact. So the problem he was solving during just that Reconstruction period, the cotton was drying out the soil. And as agriculturists, you know how important it is to have a cooperative soil. And so a lot of farmers were actually, in poverty because of this. And so he spent a lot of his time showing them how to use crop rotations, using the peanut, the sweet potato as nitrogen-based solutions for the soil. And again, he was an inventor, so he developed over 300 peanut-based products, including cooking oil, flour, coffee substitutes, paint, soap, and it's just, again, that from the ground up, things can be used. And he was really essentially showing his community how they could also be entrepreneurs, not only, heal the land, not only educate, not only serve, but how they can also make money from that. And so his contributions were just honestly truly amazing. Okay. Next.
I want to add
Sure.
one thing that I think is even more amazing is he actually made paint. He was a painter, an artist, and all of his paints were created from different plants or from sweet potatoes or from all these different hues and dyes. And he actually still has places that are painted to this day. They call it carver shellac. He figured out a way to use thyme and wintergreen in his natural paint so that it wouldn't mold. And I just think that's incredible, like that in all this technology and everything that we have, that he was able to find how to use nature to make these things last. Even like to this day, it's people have been trying to sand the color out of the wood, and the wood has just embraced the color to where it's actually become a part of that part of the house. I just think that's just pretty incredible.
And to add on to you adding on to me adding on, I also want to say he also never took a book into his laboratory. He's just had this beautiful like from the creator, right? Like just producing that from heaven to actuality. And I just think that was amazing. So one of the things that came from this movement, literal farm to table, was the Jessup wagon. And the Jessup wagon was named after Morris K. Jessup, who provided funding for the vehicle and its equipment. And so what they would do is they would put the samples on this wagon, and they would go to different people in the community and literally teach them. So not only was he doing the research, creating the inventions, but he was going out to his community and helping them, teaching them, creating bulletins. And so he was just very accessible, someone of his stature. He was very accessible, and he was really just bridging the gap between, people that may have been, again, disadvantaged, and showing them a different way. And that's truly a Tuskegee legacy. There's a lot of other things that Tuskegee has done, but, finding a way out of no way is our legacy. And so I'm very proud to just be standing here right now and talking about it. And so again, I mentioned the crop diversification and regeneration, teaching them that be on a 4-year crop rotation schedule, using legumes and different things outside of just cotton. And so again, just the farmers conference. So he would hold annually these farmer crop conferences where 400 farmers and their wives and producers would come to Tuskegee to learn and be able to ask different questions about their produce. And he would again use those samples. So very much like we're doing right now today, where it's like a farm to table conference, they were also doing these type of conferences, and it just was extremely successful, and his community was evidence of that.
Okay, so you got your history lesson. And what we're now going to talk about is how do we match those up, and how do the two things coincide? So if you think about some of the things that she just talked about, all that information that was being shared, now we have technology that can do that, but all it was he had figured out a way to not only produce crops, but if you go back and look at that cycle, by doing the different plants, they were actually replenishing the soil without having to add any unnatural fertilizer. So I mean, it's really incredible. But how our AI pilot is going to work is our basic model that you think about. You think about data collection, simulation, validation, translation, and growth. So if you're dealing with someone who may not have a business degree or may not have know how, like I said, write a grant, you can show them in our model, just like George Washington Carver went and talked about the plants. We say, hey, this is how this works, and just give them the basic framework. But we'll have the AI that already is kind of set up. So when the AI prompts them, now that we've kind of done the basics, they oh, okay, that's what that means, or this is what that data means, or this is what this metric means. So it's just getting them familiar enough with the keywords, and then getting familiar with the product and the AI to a word I learned when I was in the military is to be a force multiplier. That's one of the words that the generals liked to use a lot. I just retired. I was at the Pentagon in July before I came down here, but that's one of their buzzwords. Force multiplier, force multiplier. Basically what that means is you have an asset or a tool that multiplies your effort and turns it into a bigger effort. Force multiplier. So you can use that one if you want. So our goals and objectives, I'm not going to read them, but basically the goal is to figure out a way to use a model, use our tool to help people and to help the farmers in this situation. So the activities that we thought about were the system design, what is the infrastructure set up? Everybody doesn't have a computer. Actually, less people have computers than normal. More people have tablets or have an iPad. Everybody at this point almost has a smartphone. I would say the majority of us. So thinking about that, and that's I don't know if you've ever been on a website that is not mobile enabled, and you you go to the site and the pictures are doing all kind of crazy stuff. So that's just another part that you have to think about when you're thinking about how to deliver the product. If you make this great, robust website and it doesn't have a mobile version or an app, if you don't have an app, it's very difficult now. I'm learning that. Even trying to get work orders processed at my school for the facility, that we have to develop an app because people are not going to websites as much. You need to have an app, and so these are the things that we're thinking about: supplier coordination, pilot crop testing, and data collection and analysis. So again, this is where we're depending on the AI to identify trends and the type of data analysis, so they don't have to go $200,000 in debt like I did to to learn how to do the analysis and to do all the formulas. That AI can do that and teach you what the most important parts are. So that's the kind of the basic model of it, and then the final part is just collaborating and outreach, saying, hey, I have this great thing and it's going to change your life, and then actually being able to deliver that and then spend the time with them to show them how to use it and make it be of value to them. So yeah. So y'all are probably looking like, what is this? So part of it also, we were doing this analysis. We also were doing the analysis on ourselves, because at Tuskegee, we have a farm. We have a USDA-backed red meat facility that we are about 75% finished building. Maybe a little bit less now because I've added some things, but the reason I've added some things is because it doesn't make sense for us to have a farm, to have organic meat that can be processed, to be teaching the students how to responsibly raise and graze and to do these things where you're not hurting the animal or for those that are meat eaters. Some people that are meat eaters are gonna say you're hurting the animal, but forgive me if you're a vegetarian. But anyway, making a forward-facing meat market at the university with healthy, organic, grass-fed meat. So that is how this activity actually is benefiting the school, is while we were thinking about how to help farmers and agriculturists, we actually needed to do some improvement ourselves. So that's the revision of our own school, and that's the value of having like this market analysis and doing an assessment, is that it's a constant thing. There's never like you do it once and it's over. You have to keep on doing the process over and over. So that's what this is talking about here. And you see here, the kind of the circular motion of it, or a square in this case, but that's what it's modeling. So let's see here. Next, we are talking about the beneficiaries. So that's also a very kind of important thing when you're briefing or writing a grant or talking to your DC representative, is showing them how this is going to benefit, who it's going to benefit, and I mean, quite frankly, what the benefit is to them. They want to get reelected. And you have to remember that. That's especially in this town. I think everybody knows that. But making those things line up, and then also making it to where it briefs well. That's another phrase I learned at the Pentagon. Is it has to brief well, meaning it has to sound good. It's going to get the attention of the people that you're trying to convince or coerce or get them to come to your side. So if we look at the beneficiaries of this, you have your grocery stores and pharmacies. You have researchers, and which is important to a school like Tuskegee. We're trying to get up higher on the Carnegie level of research. They have different tiers. So that's based on the amount of research and the impact of the research. So that's very important to us, and actually in Auburn as well, which is pretty close. But the other beneficiaries, local community, we talked about the food desert. And when I say it's a food desert in Tuskegee, it is a food desert. Like if you go to Auburn, you have Whole Foods and Trader Joe's and Aldi and Publix, and what's the name of the place we have? Food Town?
It's called Piggly Wiggly.
No, we have Piggly Wiggly, but it's a small Piggly Wiggly.
Yeah,
And we have another place called Food Town, and I don't know if a lot of that stuff is expired or not, but sorry if anybody's here. Then the university and students. So all these different things, we have all of these assets. How do we use what we do have to get what we want is kind of what the model is here. So when we were doing our models, and we have a paper that is actually, I think, attached to, how you say it, Hoover? Because it's too much to talk about. So we actually have the PDF, and it's about 18 pages, and it goes into a lot more detail on the actual AI part. But I thought that it would be prudent for us to kind of go over the history and just do an overview for this, and then if you're interested, you can contact us or look at the PDF. But we'll go over three big things. So I don't know if any of you guys ever seen the Farmer's Almanac. My grandfather always read that growing up. So if you think about, if you took every Farmer's Almanac from the first time it was published to the latest one, and took all of that data and put it in one book or one source, and then made that source be the source of where you got your answers from. So you say, oh, what happened? Why is the weather doing this? Or in the last 20 years, or last 100 years, or in the last 150 years? That's what the AI can do. That's what we're talking about force multiplying, is that the amount of time that you have to take, or the amount of years of experience to be able to gather all this information. You can teach the tool to look for that information and then help aggregate it and give it to you to where it's a little bit more palatable, and where you can then check, because there are such things as hallucinations and things like that, but you're not supposed to solely depend on them, but it can save you a lot of research time. And I don't know how old everybody is, but I grew up having to use the card catalog and know the Dewey system and all of that. So this was when you were doing research, you already know. So that was just not that many years ago. I'm not that old, but what I'm trying to say is all of this new technology gives you like a head start to really accessing the data that you need. So then I thought about, well, if you don't have a big budget, you can't really waste a lot of your money on just technology or on something that is not going to give you something that's going to yield results that's going to benefit you. So maybe getting a drone for everybody is not the way to go, but if you have a group of farmers and you put together and say, oh, let's invest in a drone, or they have a youngster that knows how to, handle the drone. You say, oh, well, Johnny's son knows how to fly those things, and then you figure out how to use it. But that's the community aspect of this. But so when I say precision agriculture on the budget, that's what I'm saying. It not only are you thinking about how to use the technology, but you have to have somebody who can use the technology, and or else it's not really useful. And then finding a way to associate that cost with the benefit. So we're not gonna tell everyone, oh, you need to do this, you need to buy 15 computers and 10 tablets, and that's not really what the goal is here, is to do it at a scale to where it's useful. And then last thing is labor and knowledge equalizer. So even if you don't have all the experience, you can use that camera on your phone, or use the camera on your, hey, what is this? What kind of seed is that? What's wrong with this soil? Why is it this color? What kind of bug is that? These are all things you can do that back in the day you had to get a book or call granddad or somebody to get the information. So this is what we're kind of talking about here. All right, so this is talking about our actual AI tool that we presented, that we're presenting in the supplemental. And it's talking about, it's using that Jessup way and that George Washington Carver spirit to kind of set the foundation for what we're doing. So this may not be an actual, although I would love it, it may not be an actual physical Jessup wagon, but it will be a virtual Jessup wagon. Now, if we get a grant for that, which I have submitted to Amazon, so if anybody knows them, but to actually make a real AI Jessup wagon. But in the meantime, we'll do this virtual one. But the whole point is to do the same things, to teach, to find a way to empower the community, to help farm to table policy, to give them some tools to develop to try to equalize the playing field. And that's what the goal is here. So I won't read every specific thing, but the big thing is the dashboard. And for anybody who's developing like a tool or AI, excuse me, the dashboard is extremely important. The user interface, extremely, extremely, extremely important. It's well worth it if you have to invest in like a graphic designer or an artist. I'm telling you, it's the way that it looks, the 15-second response, the way that it interacts with you, does a lot for whether people are going to try to use it and actually learn whether the tool is valuable. A lot of, unfortunately, a lot of decisions are made based on how it looks. I think we all know that. But that's a very important point that I want to share about that. So, and we talk about this a lot more in the paper. The hardest thing to do is, how do you translate information? How do you translate data into policy? And there is no real like solution for that, and there's no one single answer, because politics are local and regional and they're different. But the things that we did notice, and in the research that we did, is that tying data to a result, or tying data to a deliverable, or as a catalyst or a solution, is kind of like the sweet spot for how to leverage the data. Because I think probably first time ever, we're not at a data shortage, but we probably have too much data, too much information. So really, it's kind of the reverse. We have to filter it down to get the right data. And that's kind of if you can figure out what the right data is, that is the gold at the end of the rainbow, so to speak. And I would invite everybody to take a look at our research because we talk a lot more about that. But for the sake of time, I'm not gonna go too hard into that. But there are some tools and some basic kind of formulas that we used and developed to filter the data, to giving it like certain criteria, and then giving a magnitude of certain characteristics. So I invite everybody to check that out. All right. So as we're kind of wrapping up this part of it, what's the big picture? I'm gonna let Ms. Ingram wrap it up.
Okay, so really, just having, again, we talked about equality and equity, justice. Our Tuskegee AI pilot is that next step, and when it comes to redesigning the system and again, just being accessible to everyone. And so I love that there's so many different people in this room. We have scientists, we have policymakers, we have technologists, we have students, and all these things. But I think one thing that Carver taught me was that he did things with so much love and reverence just for humanity. And so, there's one of my favorite quotes is from Interstellar. And they say that love is the one thing we're capable of perceiving that transcends dimensions of time and space. And again, you just saw that in Carver's work. And we're evident we're evidence of that. As we stand here before you today and continue the legacy with our Jessup Wagon 2.0, taking that wagon, going out into the community and doing what needs to be done for our community, for ourselves, for others. And so in this picture, again, Tuskegee's literal farm to table, they started out with the wagon over here. They started out with the wagon over here, again, where he would take that out. It transferred into 4 movable schools, Booker T. Washington Movable Agriculture School on Wheels. They took, this is again their farmers conference that, all the 400 farmers would come and he would teach them. And this is just a spirit of togetherness and unity. And this is actually a picture of George Washington Carver holding a lump of soil, and then again translating that all to them being able to use that. There's girls actually eating the food. So again, the whole farm to table process, Tuskegee been doing this. And so again, just again following his legacy, one of the things he says is somebody asked him, like, what's the secret to your success? And he says, okay, well, the secret to my success is simple, in all things acknowledge him and he will direct your paths. And I think people leave a lot of that part out as they talk about him. He was a man of God, and it showed in his anointing and what he did. And so with that, I just want to be obedient, and I want to read this Bible verse. It's 1 John 3:17. If someone has adequate resources, but sees a brother in need and withholds compassion, then the love of God does not truly abide in that person. Brothers and sisters, let us not merely in theory, with word or tongue, give lip service to compassion, but in action and in truth, in practice and sincerity, because practical acts of love are more than words. Thank you.
All right. So we'll open it up for